Welcome back to another Club World Cup fantasy video and podcast. This will be the updated draft ahead of Matchday 1. You will see my final team during that team selection video very soon, but also in the deadline stream I'll lock in my final squad, answer all your questions and make sure you're well prepared for the upcoming deadline. And what you can see on screen is the FPL Dylan Mini League. It's very easy to join. There is a code in the description and also an auto join link. And throughout most of my videos, you'll see it on the left hand corner on the top side. So it will say league code. If you type in XBTI0RQ5, you will automatically join this FPL Dylan Mini League. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or live stream for UCL Fantasy, FPL, and now the Club World Cup. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description. My Patreon and the championships, further links to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in that description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. As I highlighted in the How to Play guide for Club World Cup Fantasy, we start off with a 100 million budget, the same as UCL Fantasy, FPL, and every fantasy game I've covered on this channel. That includes the Euros and the World Cup, which is identical to this game because it's made by FIFA. You can access this game through the FIFA app or go to the website and go to the play zone, and there you'll find Club World Cup Fantasy. I'm going to start off with the two goalkeepers, and there is only one change in this position from my original draft, but there are plenty of goalkeepers to choose from between the sticks. I have my concerns about Borussia Dortmund, especially defensively, but they ended this season very strongly and their group looks very favourable, as I'll talk about very soon. I think Kobel is one of the best goalkeepers on paper for the group stages, and he kept 7 clean sheets and made 85 saves in 32 Bundesliga games, helping Borussia Dortmund finish in the top 4 to qualify for next season's Champions League. And in that tournament this season, he kept 4 clean sheets in 13 matches, producing 41 saves, as covered in my UCL Fantasy videos. He was also the standout goalkeeper in that game in the previous campaign when Borussia Dortmund reached the Champions League final, and they ended this season with 2 clean sheets across the last 3 games, and Kobel's ownership is currently 8.6%. His price tag is 5.4 million, but most goalkeepers are very expensive for some reason, and I think Kobel offers better value than most in this position. Now, he does face Fluminense first, then it's Mamelodi Sundowns, followed by Ulsan HD, and Borussia Dortmund will be favourites in every single one of those matches. But I think Matchday 1 is probably the most difficult on paper compared to the other opponents, so I think Dortmund could beat quite comprehensively whilst also keeping a clean sheet. Next up, though, is a goalkeeper playing on the same day in Armani, and you might be thinking, why are you doing that? Because you can't make the substitution, and that means you're only down to, one goalkeeper, which defeats the purpose of having 2 options available with this system of manual substitutions, which you can use to your advantage. Be sure to check out my How to Play Club World Cup Fantasy Guide. If you watch that and my chip strategy video, you'll be well prepared for this tournament. But Kobel actually plays on the 17th of June, just like Armani, but there's a 3-hour difference between their matches, and just like the World Cup, you are able to make substitutions within the same day of the match day, which is different to UCL Fantasy. So there is a new slide I've made, which kind of builds upon what I talked about in my How to Play video. But basically, there is a fixed deadline for transfers, which is pretty much what you always get in fantasy football games. But you do get a rolling lockout system to manage team changes during a live match day. So you can have 2 goalkeepers playing on the same day, which is what I've currently got here with Armani and Kobel, and you can substitute the player who features first if you're not happy with their score. But they have to play at different times. If they do play at the same time, and of course within the same game, you can't make substitutions. So Dortmund play at 5 p.m. UK time and River Plate play at 8 p.m. So you basically have a very short window. Dortmund's game will finish at approximately 7 p.m. UK time, which gives you less than an hour basically to make that sub and take out Kobel for Armani if needed. But you are able to do it. And for match days 2 and 3, they play on different days, so you don't need to worry about this at all. But I think Armani and Kobel is a solid goalkeeper pairing with great fixtures, especially in match day 1 in the case of River Plate facing Urawa Red Diamonds, where I think the Argentine team will be favourites, and Kobel has a very solid group stage set of fixtures overall. So I think this goalkeeper pairing is very good because it's also a minimal amount if you combine both of their price tags, and a lot of these goalkeepers do cost over 5 million. So Armani is underpriced, and it won't be Ledesma starting for River Plate it will be Armani. So I think going for these two is a great choice. I have made wholesale changes in the defensive line, but I'm still covering Bayern Munich defensively, just in a different manner, through Guerreiro instead of Upamecano, who is still a solid shout, but he is still a slight doubt for Matchday 1, and with Kim Min-jae, he is not only linked with a move away, but reports indicate from German newspapers like Sport Bild that he will miss the entire Club World Cup, so Kim Min-jae can be ruled out of the equation from this game, and he might even be sold anyway. Eric Dyer could play the first few matches before his transfer to Monaco is completed on the 1st of July, but that is also something else to talk about in a predicted lineups video if you want to see it, or in other podcasts heading into Matchday 1. Now, in the case of Upamecano, he is still a solid choice, but I think his chances of starting are going to be a bit less than Guerreiro at this moment in time, but they did provide a report, that newspaper Sport Bild, and they said that Upamecano completed dribbling exercises through small cones, long passes, runs on the running ladder, and even longer sprints. However, during training, he signalled slight discomfort in his right groin. The problems were not serious enough to force Upamecano to stop training. The nature of his injury still doesn't render it likely they'll be ready for playing time until the end of June, actually. So that is not really what you want to hear. And both Upamecano and Kim Min-jae can be ruled out of the equation for Matchday 1 and even all the way up until Matchday 3 in the case of the Frenchman. So I think Guerreiro is a decent choice. He's got that high ceiling for the goals and the assists as well. And in fact, he's got 1 goal and 1 assist over the last 5 matches across all competitions. And the Portuguese international only started 19 Bundesliga games, but he produced 4 goals and 3 assists throughout the campaign. But Bayern Munich only delivered 3 clean sheets in the league with Guerreiro in the side, and he only picked up 2 bookings all season with none in the Champions League, and Guerreiro started 6 games in that competition with only 1 goal and no clean sheet. So he was quite underwhelming in UCL Fantasy, but especially in fixtures like in Matchday 1 against Auckland City, I think Bayern Munich can keep a clean sheet even with some of their key defenders injured, and Guerreiro could get a massive score and be a nice differential in this position. His ownership is 8.7%, and remember, there is a scouting bonus for those with less than 5% ownership who score 4 points or more. Actually, in fact, it's 5 points or more. The rules do say it has to be more than 4 points. So Guerreiro is above that threshold in ownership, so you won't get that scouting bonus, but I still think he's a very good choice, and any returns he does get will actually help you rise up the ranks very easily and also win your mini leagues. But next up, I'm going to go for a budget option who is not a differential, but there is a reason for that. Francisco Moura is completely underpriced, and he really should be at 4.5 to 5 million, if anything, especially when you see some of the pricing for weaker teams in this competition. But Francisco Moura has a sensational record from left wing back with 2 goals and 5 assists over the last 10 matches. He's also picked up 2 bookings in that time frame, but I don't think that's a major cause for concern. Over the course of the season, Moura has delivered 3 goals, 10 assists, and 11 clean sheets across 30 starts in the Portuguese league. The 25-year-old was only booked twice in that competition, but his Europa League record was less impressive, with only 1 goal, 1 assist, and 1 clean sheet in 9 matches. But his ownership is 12.7%, and his price tag is 4.1 million, and he starts virtually every game for Porto, and he kicks things off facing Palmeiras in Matchday 1, then it's Inter Milan in Matchday 2, which is still quite tough despite the departure of Inzaghi, and then they face Al Ahly in Matchday 3, which is probably the best fixture they have in the group stages. But I wouldn't even mind going for 2 or 3 Porto players, and that's something I'll discuss a lot in this particular video. But next up is another player who also does face Francisco Moura actually in the group stages, and that's Benjamin Pavard. And you might actually be a bit inclined to go away from this sort of thing and avoid clashes, but if you have 2 defenders, they can still keep a clean sheet simultaneously in a 0-0 draw, and I don't think that is, a completely unexpected scoreline or impossible to occur in Matchday 2. But Pavard was benched in 5 out of the last 10 matches. He scored against his former club Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarter-final, which was his only goal in that tournament. And Inter Milan kept 5 clean sheets in that competition with Pavard in the lineup as they reached the final, but they lost 5-0 to PSG there. He didn't score in Serie A after 23 appearances, so you're not going to get much goal threat from Benjamin Pavard overall. But the Frenchman also produced 1 assist and 6 clean sheets in that competition. His ownership is 3.3%, so he is eligible for those scouting bonus points if he does get more than 4 points in a given game, he will get those additional points, which I discussed in my how to play guide. His price tag is 4.8 million, so he's more accessible than the likes of Denzel Dumfries, who costs over 6 million, and Jan Sommer in goal, who costs 5.4 million. And Inter Milan face Monterrey, Urawa Red Diamonds, and River Plate. So actually, there are quite a few players from the same group with Armani, Francisco Mara, and Pavard, and there will also be more clashes when I talk about the midfielders and forward line very soon. But let's go on to the next defender who plays in a different group, thank God, and that's going to be Cucurella, who is a premium in this game. He cost 5.8 million, and he made 36 Premier League appearances, scoring 5 goals and getting 1 assist. In the Europa Conference League, he scored twice and also got an assist in just 6 starts. But Chelsea didn't keep a clean sheet, yet they still won Europe's 3rd tier competition, and Cucurella is a template pick with 28% ownership, and his price tag, like I said, is 5.8 million. Chelsea faced Los Angeles FC first, then it's Flamengo, followed up by ES Tunis, and Jorginho will be joining Flamengo, of course, and he could even start that game against his former club. That could be quite a tough game for Chelsea, but for match days 1 and 3, I think Chelsea are by far the better team, and they have a great chance of keeping a clean sheet and also winning those matches. But the final defender is a new signing for the biggest club in world football. Trent Alexander-Arnold cost 6.4 million in Club World Cup Fantasy. He was added very recently, and he provided 6 assists and scored thrice in 33 Premier League matches. He also delivered 12 clean sheets in FPL. But in terms of the official stats, this figure would have been much lower because he was subbed off at around 60-70 minutes very often, and then he would bank the clean sheet in FPL, but Liverpool would concede shortly afterwards. But you would get those points in Club World Cup Fantasy as well if he was subbed off early, so that can be both a blessing and a curse. You just want him to get more than 60 minutes, as always, in these fantasy games. But he didn't play much for Liverpool towards the end of the season. He was mainly a substitute, and the Liverpool fans had pretty much had enough of him, and of course they aren't happy with his move to Real Madrid. But in UCL Fantasy, Trent only got 1 assist and 2 clean sheets in 8 Champions League matches, but his ownership in this game is 12.7%, and I think matchday 1 could be quite tough for Real Madrid, especially for their defenders and Courtois in goal, because I think Al Hilal is probably the second best team in that group. But then it's Pachuca and Red Bull Salzburg for Real Madrid. I think those games look really appealing, and you could double or triple up on Real Madrid for those 2 matches in particular, but I think you should be a little bit careful about Al Hilal in match day 1. But that completes my defensive line. There are no defensive double-ups, unlike my first draft, of course, which I talked about a couple of days ago. But let's now move on to the midfielders. Another differential to consider is Julian Brandt, but unfortunately, he has gone up to over 5% ownership. When I first included him a couple of days ago, he had less than 5%, which would have qualified for those scouting bonus points that I keep mentioning. But he is still worth considering, with 2 goals and 4 assists over the last 4 matches. And Borussia Dortmund salvaged a miserable Bundesliga campaign. They were sitting at around 8th to 12th for most of the season, and they actually ended up with 5 consecutive victories to finish 4th in that table. The German winger started 30 league matches with 5 goals and 10 assists, and whilst he accumulated 5 assists in 11 Champions League starts, he didn't score in Europe's most prestigious competition this season. So the goal scoring record isn't great, but the assists is what makes up for it in Julian Brandt's case, and the ownership is 6% right now. The price tag is also very appealing at 6.5 million, and Borussia Dortmund face Fluminense, Mamelodi Sundowns, and Olsen HD, as covered towards the beginning of this video when discussing Kobel. So I think going for 2 or 3 Borussia Dortmund players is a viable strategy, especially in match days 2 and 3. I think Fluminense could be tougher than people expect, but maybe I'm overhyping that a little bit too much. You've got Garassi up front. You've also got a few decent defenders like Ryerson who offer good value, but I think having 2 or 3 is obviously the sweet spot. You might even just want to go for 1. That's fair enough, but I'm pretty much having a Borussia Dortmund player in every single one of my drafts, and I could see myself sticking with that sort of strategy come the time that I do my team selection video, and also locking my team during that deadline stream. But next up is going to be another Chelsea midfielder, but not Enzo Fernandez this time. Instead, I'm going for Cole Palmer, who has been poor since January, I will admit. And in terms of his recent record, Palmer only has 1 goal over the last 10 matches, and that came from the penalty spot against Liverpool. But the assists have improved in recent months, with 4 assists in that spell. And despite Chelsea winning the Europa Conference League, Palmer didn't score in that tournament. He got 3 assists in 6 matches, but the goal scoring has definitely dipped in 2025. He has stayed available throughout the season with 37 Premier League games and 36 starts, and he produced 23 goal contributions, but that pales in comparison to his debut Chelsea season last time out, where he took the Premier League by storm. His ownership is 23.9% at the time of this recording, and his price tag is 9.6 million. He faces Los Angeles first, followed up by Flamengo and ES Tunis, and I think he's one of the best 9 to 10 million midfielders in the game, but you might find better value elsewhere, and you would have seen some of those options in my first draft, and also you're going to see them coming up very soon. Not just Julian Brandt, who cost 6.5 million, he might offer better value, and also when you look at the fixtures, that looks really appealing, but I have to admit Chelsea also have some pretty solid games on paper. But next up, I'm going to go for a PSG midfielder in Douay, but Ousmane Dembele will miss the group stages. That has been confirmed by a reliable journalist, Fabrice Hawkins. So in terms of covering PSG offensively, I think Douay could be the standout at 8.2 million. He only has 2 goals and 3 assists over the past 10 matches, but all of them came in PSG's 2 games recently, and they were cup finals, the Coupe de France and the Champions League. He got 2 assists against Reims in a 3-0 win there. And after a stunning performance versus Inter Milan, Douay scored a brace and provided an assist to help PSG secure the maiden Champions League title. And of course, he was awarded Player of the Match as well. The Frenchman delivered 5 goals and 3 assists over 16 games in the Champions League. But on the other hand, his Ligue 1 record hasn't been that great. He started 18 out of 31 games and he got 6 goals and 6 assists. But this has been his breakout season and his potential is definitely really high. He also played 63 minutes in France's 5-4 defeat to Spain, and he wasn't particularly impressive, but who even cares because he did it in the Champions League final. His ownership is 22.5%, and I think that will rise even further with Dembele's injury, but I think that also has a side effect, and it could make the PSG attackers and their team a little bit less appealing, and Atletico Madrid in Matchday 1 is still a tough opponent. Then it's Botafogo and Seattle Sounders. So I think the strategy would be to get to 2 or 3 PSG players for Matchday 3. But before that, you don't necessarily need to have that many PSG players, especially in the attack. And I look at Matchday 1 and you could definitely have a higher ceiling from other options in the midfield. But the 4th midfielder here is going to be from Porto, and he's another budget option in Rodrigo Mora. And I think he is going to make a mockery of that 4.2 million price tag. The 18-year-old has 7 goals and 1 assist over the last 10 competitive matches. He secured 10 goals and 4 assists in 23 league games for Porto, but he wasn't able to translate this to the Europa League, just like the defender Francisco Mora, so let's not get confused between those two there. So he only had 2 starts in the Europa League and no goal contributions, but he is so young, another player of so much potential, and the fixtures are still quite decent overall. He also played 71 minutes versus Wydad Casablanca in a friendly, and he was an unused substitute in Portugal's 2-1 win over Germany in the Nations League semi-final. His ownership is 9.1%, and the fixtures are decent. He faces Palmeiras in Matchday 1, then it's Inter Milan, which is a bit awkward because it basically separates Matchdays 1 and 3, where you've got the good fixtures, and Inter Milan can be a tough cookie to crack. I know that Champions League final will change our perceptions on them, and also they've got a new manager. We'll see if they have a manager bounce, or perhaps they'll struggle to get things clicking from the get-go, but I think the likes of Francisco Mara in the defensive line and Rodrigo Mora in the midfield are still worth including, and you've got another budget option to triple up on Porto, which I'll talk about very soon, but I think he's a great facilitator and enabler. You've also got Mastantuono, who should join Real Madrid after the conclusion of the Club World Cup, so that means he'll start every game for River Plate, and they could go quite far in this tournament as well. But the final player does play for Real Madrid, and it is Jude Bellingham, who has had a disappointing season, and a bit like Cole Palmer, he has paled in comparison to the previous campaign. So in terms of output, he only has 1 goal and 1 assist over the last 10 matches, and also a red card. In La Liga, he got 9 goals and 8 assists in 31 games. He only delivered 6 goals and assists combined across 13 Champions League appearances, and his ownership is 17.2%. The price tag is 9.3 million. If Musiala is fit for Matchday 1, you might want to consider him. And I think Elise could be a level above in terms of the form and also the output this season compared to Jude Bellingham. And also Bayern Munich have a better matchday 1 fixture compared to Real Madrid. So I think Bellingham is worth considering and he might step up in this tournament, but I have some concerns about him, and I think Real Madrid have better options in that attack, like Mbappe, who I talked about in my first draft. There's also Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo if he stays, but Bellingham is my favourite midfielder in Club World Cup Fantasy from Real Madrid. Let's now move on to the forwards. There are so many options in this position. This forward line can completely change amongst every single draft that I make, but I have to say, I'm really happy with these 3 forwards and they have a great chance of making it to my final team. There is no doubt that Inter Miami have struggled this season under their new manager, Javier Mascherano, but Lionel Messi has still been quite solid, especially in recent games. He has 7 goals in that time frame, and he came on as a substitute in a 1-0 win versus Chile for Argentina, and he has 5 goals and 3 assists over the previous 3 matches for Inter Miami, and he also has 15 goal contributions across 13 appearances in the MLS. He has translated this form to the CONCACAF Champions Cup with 5 goals in just 6 starts. His ownership is 19.1% and the price tag is 10.5 million. So he's a little bit cheaper than Kane, Haaland, Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe, but after that, he's the most expensive forward in the game, and you could find better value elsewhere, you could argue, but I think it's a great captaincy option in match days 1 and potentially 3, but facing Porto in match day 2, that is a little bit tough on paper. I think Porto would have the advantage in that matchup, but Lionel Messi can be the difference maker for both club and country. The same goes for Erling Haaland, who scored in a 3-0 win over Italy as Norway cruised to a very important victory there for World Cup qualification, and despite also returning in Game Week 38 of FPL, Haaland's form has been quite mixed bag since his return from injury. The Norwegian has 6 goals over the last 10 matches, and he produced 22 goals and 3 assists in 31 Premier League matches, and all of them were starts, so whenever he's available, he does start there for Manchester City. His Champions League record was also incredible, with 8 goals in 9 appearances. His ownership is 17.3%, so he could be going under the radar. He might even be the best captaincy option of any player in matchday 1, facing Wydad Casablanca, then it's Al Ain. Then in matchday 3 it's Juventus, who aren't the same force as they were 10 years ago, but Juventus are still a tough opponent at times, and they beat Man City this season in the Champions League. Or technically it was last season. You tell me in the comment section down below. But the third and final forward only costs 4.2 million, and he's a great enabler for your Club World Cup fantasy team, and it's none other than Aguilar. My only concern is that tripling up on Porto might be excessive, and in future drafts I might trim this down to just 1 or 2 Porto players, but the Spaniard has scored in 5 out of the last 10 games. He also made a cameo off the bench against France in the Nations League semi-final, and he scored the winning goal in a friendly versus Wydad Casablanca, who are also participating in the Club World Cup. And Aguilar has started 23 out of 30 league games, scoring 19 and assisting 3, and he also impressed in the Europa League, getting 6 goals in just 9 games there. His ownership is 7.6%, so he's a relative differential, but that is still too high to qualify for the scouting bonus, and the price tag is just incredible. It also gives you a viable alternative instead of just going for premium options like Kane, Messi, Haaland, Mbappe, Vinicius, etc., and also the likes of Garassi, who offer great value at around 9 million, but Porto face Palmeiras, Inter Miami, and Al Ahly, so I think he could be a great option in every single one of those match days, and Porto might even go far in this competition as well. So that concludes my 15-man squad. Let's talk about the captaincy. Remember, with your bench, you just want to put those playing later in the match day on your bench and have those starting on the 15th of June in your starting 11, and make sure that you can just know all the ins and outs. And if you have played UCL Fantasy, the Euros or the World Cup, you have a good idea of how this tournament will go as well. But check out my how to play guide and all your questions will be answered in that podcast. So my first captain will be Lionel Messi with this draft, and if needed, I'll switch it to Erling Haaland. You can also just leave it and not make any substitutions and rely on automatic subs to take place, and that will also mean with your vice captaincy, it will automatically become your captain if your original captain doesn't play. But my advice is always to be in control of your squad, and that is going to be a core principle of this game. It will give you an advantage over those who rely on the automatic subs. So you can ensure that you are well prepared. If you have any bench players, you can leave them on your bench as well, and you can focus on maximizing your points potential with your starting 11 and also with the captaincy too. But it's not like UCL Fantasy where you can pick a captain for every single day within a match day. So after your first captain is played, you can only switch it once, and that is about it. But all the rules are discussed, like I said, in my other videos. Check out my chip strategy guide and also the how to play video. But from this 15-man squad, I know Bellingham and Palmer are decent options, and even Aguilar could be a great choice as well. My favourite captains would be Messi and Erling Haaland. With the captaincy sorted and also a 15-man squad built once more, you can see my starting 11 and my substitutes. So I've got Kobel in goal, and once that Dortmund game finishes, I will have to be right on it and sub him out for Armani if needed, just in time before River Plate play at 8 PM UK time on the 17th of June. My defensive line includes Guerrero, Francisco Moura and Cucurella. A midfield of Brandt, Palmer, Doué and Rodrigo Mora looks really solid on paper, with Haaland, Aguilar and Messi up front. Messi's my first captain, and if needed, I'll switch it to Erling Haaland. And my bench has Armani, also Trent Alexander-Arnold, Pavard and Bellingham, and all of them play later in the match day. So if we sort it out by date, you can see Armani plays on the 17th of June, Trent and Bellingham both play on the 18th of June, and the same goes for Benjamin Pavard as well. Everyone in my starting 11 will play earlier in the match day. And of course, the goalkeepers I covered earlier. That is my current strategy, going for Kobel and Armani, but they might not be my final goalkeepers come the deadline. And of course, a lot of you will have different concerns and also ideas in terms of how to optimize every single position. To access all the chips, if you want to use one in Matchday 1, you click this orange icon, whether on the app for FIFA or you're on the website using the play zone section, and you can activate the maximum captain or the 12th man in Matchday 1, but the wildcard and the mystery booster cannot be used in this deadline. And of course, for Matchdays 1 and 4, you can't use the wildcard. That's all covered in my how to play video as well. But hopefully this has been very useful to you, and you can have different ideas of how to tackle the beginning of this tournament. Getting off to a strong start is crucial because of the 7 matchday format, just like the Euros and World Cup Fantasy. And even in UCL Fantasy with more matchdays than this, you want to get off to a strong start, because as we get closer to the end, things will become more template, as it typically happens. So you want to avoid kind of relying on making a late surge there, which you can still do, especially by watching my videos. But getting off to a strong start is really what you want to aim for, and you will be able to do that in Matchday 1. That concludes my updated draft for Club World Cup Fantasy, and very soon you'll see my team selection in only a couple of days' time. And next Sunday at 12 AM UK time, I'll be going live for the first match day of this tournament, and it will be yet another fantasy game that I cover on this channel. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you never miss a single uploaded live stream for Club World Cup Fantasy, FPL, and the Champions League. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for more Club World Cup Fantasy content. That will include the team selection, potentially the best differentials, budget players, players to avoid, and there's going to be much more headed your way, including that deadline stream next week.